everybody. This is David coming to you today from the marina in Bremerton, Washington. Getting ready to catch a ferry back into Seattle up in the Pacific Northwest for a couple of weeks with my wife doing some business for her business up here. And so thought I would do the recap for Lesson 1 and the preview for Lesson 2 for MSOM 601. In Lesson 1, it was really a foundation type of lesson for you to begin to get you used to some of the requirements that we have in graduate level studies. And so the introduction that you had in the discussion board was really having you begin to learn and to discuss the key things in writing. Writing is really a tough deal today. And one of the things that I try to communicate with brand new students, first of all, I'm not an academic. And so I don't do this from an academic perspective, but I do it from a clarity perspective. As I was the head of sales for a large food company for many years, I would get hundreds of proposals from people in the field asking me to do something. And if they weren't very clear, if they weren't very organized in their writing and their proposals, their proposal found its way into the trash can pretty quickly. And so I'm a real stickler in this class about clarity of writing, making sure that you're judicious with your words. And so it's really important as you go through that. So my hope is that in this class over the next few weeks, as we go through and talk about things, that you'll appreciate some of the comments that I make about clarity in your writing. That's why I always focus on headings. I focus on those types of things, introductions to explain why something is going to be important, what the purpose of your paper is, and then the conclusion is your last chance to sell your points and your ideas to the person who's reading the paper. So that was really discussion 1, talking about writing recaps and then also providing a personal introduction from you to the other students in the class. And then the second one was really about the CSU Online Library. This is one of the areas that is much different in graduate level work than undergraduate work. Undergraduate work, you cannot use basic internet sources because they're not what I talked about in the introduction, peer-reviewed. And so I want you to get used to using the CSU Online Library to find those peer-reviewed sources. We'll talk a little bit later in the class about bias and how bias can creep into your writing if you use other types of sources. So just get used to it, and I guarantee you by the end of this class, hopefully, the CSU Online Library will be one of your best friends, particularly from a research perspective. And then in the first class, in the first lesson, I have a quiz. It's the only time you're ever going to have a quiz in any of these classes. But I do that to make sure that you're really focused on some of the key components. The 20 questions that were on this quiz are the 20 issues that I find brand new students in a graduate level course have the most problems with. And so that's why I address those in that quiz. I would encourage you to go back to that quiz over and over. I also wanted to make sure in that quiz, and part of the reason that I had a quiz was to make sure that you watched the videos, that you read the additional documents that I put in there about discussion boards and writing tips and those types of things. And so just make sure that you focus on those. And I hope that those were very beneficial for you. So that was really Lesson 1. Lesson 2 is where we jump into problem solving and critical thinking. And it's really about Amina's story. Amina's story is just a very compelling story on problem solving, on critical thinking. And it was really the foundation of this course. When I began to develop the course a few years ago, I asked the curriculum designers who I happen to be working with on this project to find me a story that students could work with and live with over the 7 weeks in the course. And they found Amina's story from the book Now You're Thinking. And it really was a compelling story for me. And so that's why I use that story. Sorry, the wind's about to blow my computer over. So Amina's story is really a great story, and we're going to live with it over the next few weeks, and we're going to use it as an application. We're going to draw key points out of it because it was one big problem-solving and critical thinking activity, as you will find as you read that story. So discussion 1 begins to talk about and provide the foundation for critical thinking. Now, one of the key things that a lot of people, particularly with a business background, find is they confuse critical thinking and strategic thinking. And so what I want you to do in discussion 1 is to compare and contrast strategic thinking, and critical thinking. And I've given you what I think is a really good tool to use to develop comparing and contrasting type of papers. Now, this is going to be beneficial, hopefully, for you outside of this class as well, because you may have a boss or someone sometimes who has 2 or 3 different proposals, and what they want you to do is to compare and contrast them and come back with what you believe is the best solution. And so the 2 techniques that I have you look at as part of this compare contrast papers, I think may be beneficial for you outside of just this exercise. So treat it seriously, take a look at it, make sure that your posts are very thorough, find additional research at the CSU Online Library, but then use that compare contrast method as a way to communicate that in the discussion board. Okay? Assignment 1 this week has you go to an outside source, an outside Talent Lens website, and you will answer a series of questions. And after you answer those questions, what it will do is it will give you your critical thinking style. Now, that's really important, I believe, because whenever you go through these types of assessments, it will provide you the lens through which you're going to approach this topic. And so one of the key things that I find in higher education, every class I teach, by the way, you start off with an assessment. And I don't do the assessments just because I love assessments, but I do love assessments, by the way. But I have this honest feeling that in higher education, if all we do is put a funnel on top of your head and fill it full of facts, figures, and theories, but we don't teach you anything about you, I think we fail. And so assessments are a good way for you to begin to understand how you approach things, how you think about things. And so this critical thinking assessment that you will take is one that I want you to take, and then I want you to write about it. And I've asked you a few questions you can write. Make sure that you put the formats in your paper as I suggest earlier. But then hopefully you'll find some little discovery about you as you go through that. Okay? So that's assignment 1. Assignment 2 talks about thinking style. So you just have gone through and discovered what your thinking style, your critical thinking style is. And now you're going to look at the critical thinking styles of 6 of the main characters in Amina's story. And so that's going to be the application this week. Now, here's going to be a tip. If you're watching this video, you'll get this. If you're not watching the video, you may not get it, okay? So you're not going to know, first of all. But I think it's in chapter 3 of the book, Now You're Thinking. It actually gives you the critical thinking styles of the key people, the key characters in Amina's story. So all you have to do is read it and apply it. But anyway, the key thing here is to make sure that you understand that one critical thinking style is not better than another. They're just different. And so you'll also find that in Amina's story, it took a lot of different critical thinking styles to come up with success in that project and in that problem. And so the application is obviously there for you and your business that not everyone's going to think like you, and that's a good thing. I just remember many years ago in marketing, so I was the head of sales, and the head of marketing and the head of sales would get into arguments a lot. I mean, we're just on opposite sides of the fence. Well, it would have helped me out a lot if I'd have known back then that my critical thinking style was analytical, and the head of marketing's critical thinking style was open-minded. Now, one wasn't right and the other wrong. They were just different. And so, I'm sure that he looked at me and said, man, he is so narrow and focused that we're never going to get any type of innovation in the business. And I looked at him and said, we're never going to make any numbers because he's just out there looking at everything and he wants to try everything. And so we had no discipline in the business. Well, we needed both of those to be able to have some degree of success in the overall company. Okay? So that is lesson 1 review, lesson 2 preview. I'm going to be on the road a bit, but I'm always accessible. So if you have any questions, make sure that you contact me. Have a great week, study hard, and talk to you soon.